What's going on, everybody? Welcome to BridgingTheGeekdoms. I am your host, Robert Slavinsky. And yeah, this is going to be a smaller than typical show. I do have some things I want to discuss in some regards to the Barbie movie, which I unfortunately got to see. But I really want to talk about this stuff going on with David Ayer, as well as what is going to happen to the DC film universe if the DCU actually fails. So let's get into it here, guys. Let's go. What is going on? It's been a minute. Well, about a week. But it's still been a minute, right? I suppose. Yeah, I tell you what, this past week it's been kind of interesting seeing what's been going on here. And I gotta say, here we go. We got Triton just grabbing some dinner. Might be a few minutes late. That's all right, Triton. I'll be on for a little bit. Thanks for joining us. Derpy Entertainment. If it fails, Zack Snyder certainly won't save it either. This is DC Last Chance. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be an interesting topic that we're gonna discuss here momentarily. But the first thing I want to discuss is the Barbie movie here, because I unfortunately had the unfortunate privilege of checking this film out yesterday. My oldest daughter, God bless her, she wanted to see this film so bad, and being the good father that I thought I was, I took her to go see this movie. I don't get these scores here, not one bit. This movie is quite possibly the worst movie that I have ever seen in a movie theater. It is... Derpy Entertainment. So how woke was it? I tell you what, it wasn't as woke as I thought it was going to be, but the overall message is basically, hey, men are the reason why women struggle in today's world, which to me, I just don't understand. Like, how do you get that in today's world? This whole idea of feminism and women have struggled so much in today's world. I don't get it. I really don't. We've seen statistics prove that women are far more successful and have better opportunities today than they have ever in the past. So the fact that they're sitting there acting like all the issues that women have today are men's fault is ridiculous. And shame on someone like Ryan Gosling and Simu Liu and all of the male actors. The guy that was the villain on Secret Invasion was in it. You got Michael Cera. Even John Cena pops up. And I tell you what, it's ridiculous. It's unfortunate, ridiculous, and I'm ashamed of those actors for doing this. I mean, Adam and Eve, anybody. You better watch yourself, people. Women freak out when you talk like that. But overall, it was a terrible film. I do not recommend it to anybody. I am not too happy about the message that came through, especially with my 9-year-old daughter watching it. And I tell you what, they need to stop pushing Will Ferrell in films like these as well. The fact that this movie at times doesn't know what it wants to be. It doesn't know if it wants to be not a romantic, but a serious, pushing a serious message, or if it wants to be a comedy. It's pretty bad. And I gotta say, I'm not happy that my 9-year-old sat through and listened to that message. Hopefully, though, I'll be able to make sure she doesn't fall into the same habits that the current females fall into nowadays, but it is pretty unfortunate. So I don't recommend it. Don't go see it. Don't check it out. My daughter asked me, she goes, is it a movie you want to see again? I said, absolutely not. Not even if it's for free. I am not watching it. It's not good. It's not good in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, let me know if you did see it, what you thought, if you plan on seeing it, why you plan on seeing it, because I don't think anybody should see this movie. So yeah, let us know in the comments. All right. So moving on to the first topic, because the main topic is going to be what happens to DC if the DCU fails. The first topic I do want to talk about before we get to that, though, is some interesting things that popped up over the last couple days with David Ayer. And it's really interesting because I tell you what, this Derpy Entertainment. I don't care. Johnny Bravo was right looking back at it now. I miss that show. But there's some interesting information or interesting developments with David Ayer. This is supposed to be a man that the Snyder fandom supports as much as they were supporting Zack Snyder. They felt that he was shortchanged just like Zack was. The only difference is that David took it in stride. David, even though he was left out in the cold and pushed aside when Suicide Squad came out in 2016, he just took it in stride. He said, look, hey, that's the studio's bidding. Whereas Zack was a little bit different. He handled things differently for sure. So I want to pull this up here. So it looks like, and I'm going to go back a few here. So David Ayer goes, okay, so I have it from a good source, CPIC related. The Blue Beetle movie is very, very good. I'm hearing great things. I can't wait to see it. We got to show up for this one. Blue Beetle Battalion, Blue Beetle movie. And then this Arclight PNW over on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it goes, oh God, David, prepare for a certain toxic fandom from a fellow director to attack you for this. Just a heads up. And I tell you what, he was ready. He saw it coming. He goes, I know, already piling on. There's really good people in this project. Gotta support them. Amazing how the vultures sit there waiting for a post to happen. Sometimes it ain't that deep. And I have to say, did I not call this? I called this a while ago. The thing about the Snyder Cult is they don't care about the artists. They don't care about the filmmakers. They don't care about the actors. They don't care about anything else but simply what they want. And it's showing up in droves lately, this attitude they have. And you have people, and I talked about this on a video earlier this week, you have Sil Abdul, who is adding to the toxicity, adding to the hate and the bullying that this fandom does. And it's really, really, really starting to get annoying. But here's the thing. It doesn't stop there, because you see what David Ayer is talking about. You see someone like Leonidas turning against your own support base to get your cut of Suicide Squad out when everybody else didn't give a shit about it is wild. Good luck to you, but damn. All right. So here we go. Let's take a look at this, okay? David Ayer wants to help promote Blue Beetle. He's excited about it. He's heard great things about it. He believes it needs to be seen. He believes that there needs to be support for this film. I agree. I'm not going to judge that movie until I see it, as everybody should do with all film. But he's hearing good things. And it really is important for the fandom to sit back and just give it a shot. We have to support. Do you not remember that the Snyder movement, the first Snyder Cut, even into the SnyderVerse movement, was about artistic integrity? And whether you hate James Gunn or not, you need to understand that there are artists, there are actors, there are filmmakers, there are people that worked hard on Blue Beetle. And the fact that you're all sitting there trying to push this narrative and to boycott it and to just not even listen to people who want to watch this movie or even help support it. And again, you don't even need to help support it. Just don't say anything. Don't say anything. But that's the problem. You've lost your way. You've completely lost your way in regards to, the movement. I don't want to say the movement, but just the positive side of the movement. You've lost your way. So you have Leonidas saying that. You have people like Artemis It's gross how Ayer continues to belittle the fan base that have been actively involved in wanting his cut released. Charity campaign and hashtags. I hope sucking up to Gunn works out for him. Again, why does it matter? Why does it matter that Ayer is in support of something? Why do you have to turn around automatically and bash and belittle a filmmaker because he's supporting something that you don't like? That is the issue that I see. Yo, what's going on in the chat? Hey guys, chill out over in the chat, please. I don't want to see fighting. This is the one thing. Look, I know that I push back on the Snyderverse and the Snyder Cult quite a bit. I don't want to see the fighting in the chat. You know, I want to hear from both sides in the chat. I always do. I'm always open to hear it. But, you know, moving with this, David Ayer, people are mad because he says, amazing how the vultures sit there waiting for posts to happen. So people are mad that he's saying, they're calling certain sect of fans vultures. And everyone's most despised Snyder cultist, KS, says, y'all know I've been an Ayer supporter for years. And I think he's an amazing director, but I didn't put in years of work for this cut just to be called a vulture. I'll continue to support release the Ayer cut because it's the right thing to do. The cast deserve it, and it's better. So he's mad that he's called a vulture. Well, obviously, if the shoe fits, because there's no reason to sit there. As Ayer says, there are people, they just sit there. They're waiting anxiously, you know, waiting for some kind of post to come through where they can latch onto it and spew their toxicity, spew their hate, and push their narrative that anything that isn't Snyder is bad. And that has to stop. I don't get why no one understands this. It has to stop. Look, I get you want to see the Snyderverse restored, as do I. I say this all the time. I would love to see it restored. But why are we hoping? Why is the fandom hoping so badly that the universe they say they love, the characters they say they love, why are they hoping and pushing so hard for it to fail? That's counterintuitive. That makes no sense. You should hope that it succeeds. Because I tell you what, the more eyes, the more success that there is with the DC films, the better chance it is to see the Snyderverse continued. Because that means that there's a fan base, and there's a large fan base, not just the Snyderverse fan base, but a large fan base that they want to eat up DC content. And they'll give it a shot. Whether it's an animation, graphic novel, live action, whatever it is, they'll give it a shot. So what's going on over in the chat? Oh, man. Derpy Entertainment goes, they are not DC fans if they hate Gunn. Look, that is one thing that I won't say is true. Like, they can not like a person, okay? They can go ahead and not like Gunn. You don't have to like a director to like the universe that he's directing in. That's kind of a weird take. Like, look, I am not a fan of Greta Gerwig right now. I'm not. And while I would hate to see her come into the DC universe, I would not sit there and hold it against her for the rest of the universe, the rest of the franchise, if she came in and directed a Harley Quinn movie. Would I want to see that movie? Not really, but I would check it out just to give it a shot. But the rest of the filmverse wouldn't be affected by her being in that franchise. And I get that it's a little bit different because Gunn is the head of the studio, and he's the one that's kind of the guiding light for everything going on there. But don't forget, he's not going to be directing every single project. He's not going to be writing every single project. He'll be there in the background. He'll be guiding the overall story. But on a film-to-film, project-to-project basis, we're going to see the the impact from different filmmakers and actors and writers. And I think that's one thing that people just don't seem to understand when it comes to the DC universe. Derpy also says, and honestly, with David Ayer's cut, I don't think the fan base crying and attacking people over certain version deserves it at this point. That I agree with. I do. I agree that the fan base does not deserve to see the Snyderverse restored or see the Ayer cut, because right now, yeah, they don't look good. They do not look good. They're not a fan base that I would want to show support to and to reward for anything. Triton says, I can't comment on the fans on Twitter, but on Facebook I've seen a lot of cynicism regarding Gunn allowing the Ayer cut coming out, but zero hate for the Ayer. The Ayer. The Snyder community on Facebook loves Ayer. Yeah, I guess. I mean, there we go. I don't know, man. I gotta say, I gotta fix this here. It was a little, there we go. Snyder community on Facebook coming out, zero hate for Ayer. Go on Twitter. I mean, I hate to say it. I hate saying, oh, go do this, go do that. But it's true. Twitter, I just showed some of them. The Twitter, it's bad. It's bad. Derpy says, I would love to see it, but they don't see it because they'll ask for more. I'm saying attacking it. Yeah, I don't think, again, I would love to see the Ayer cut, but I don't think anyone really deserves to see it from the Snyder fandom or even from the Ayer side of things, because just the way that everyone has acted about all of this, it's pretty unfortunate for sure. I don't know, guys. Like, look. Here's the thing, Triton. I know you're watching, and as Derpy says, they don't deserve it. He's right. They just don't deserve it at this point. But here's the thing, Triton, I know you're a big Snyder fan, and I know you're someone who doesn't really buy in or push into this whole toxic side of things, and I appreciate that, and I like seeing that. And I hope that you stay passionate and excited and push, the positivity and the positive side of things, because it's important to do so. But I don't know, man. You gotta tell them something. Like, man, it's tough out there. It really is. To see what this fandom has become is disappointing in my eyes, because it's a fandom that I personally loved being a part of for so long, and as I've seen it fall and fall and fall and fall, I can't stand with them anymore. And that's why, I really push to animate the SnyderVerse fandom, because I'm trying to differentiate the animate the SnyderVerse fandom from the restore the SnyderVerse fandom, because of the negative impact and appeal that the restore the SnyderVerse fandom has. Derpy says, the reason it failed is because it was the New 52 and Snyder bases Superman off of Injustice. I wouldn't say that's why it failed. Here's the thing, and I'm being completely upfront and honest with everybody right now. If Man of Steel and BVS, let's take that back. We could look at it either way. Well, let's look at it this way first. If Man of Steel and BVS didn't come out, let's say Man of Steel came out this year, BVS 2 years from now, Justice League a year or two after that. Like, you just shift 10 years right down. I truly believe that it would be a hit today. Snyder's vision, Snyder's arc, Snyder's story was ahead of its time. And that's not Snyder's fault. That's more the studio's fault for not reading the room at the time. They should have read the room and understanding exactly what was wanted out there with the superhero genre. Because if you think about it, 2013, 2012, 2013 through 2018, 2019, that was the superhero genre boom. We are on the decline now of that. The reason being is there's nothing fresh or new out right now. People have gotten sick of the old, the Marvel way. They want something a little more real, something with a little more substance. And I think that's why if Snyder released his stuff today, it would be successful. The problem is, continuing it now, there's such a bad taste in everybody's mouth from the DCEU and the SnyderVerse that continuing it now doesn't guarantee any success. And that's a big problem. Unfortunately, it's a big problem. Derpy says, and casuals don't know nothing about that side of Superman or the character in the comics. Yeah, again, I don't think it has to do with the characterization of Superman being more of an injustice side, because he really wasn't. I mean, honestly, sit back, Derpy, sit back and think about Man of Steel, BVS, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. There's nothing in there that is the injustice Superman. Sure, there's bits and pieces of what the Nightmare Superman would have been, but we never got to it. So the fans, the correlation there, that's not what they're seeing. Man. So many chats right now. BlackRock, the same type of movie, question mark? What's going on, BlackRock? I'm not sure what you're asking in that regard. If you're saying what I was talking about, Man of Steel, same movie, like, in my opinion, if the same movie came out today, yes, I think it would be successful, massively successful. But if they did Man of Steel, it should have been more colorful. Again, I don't think the look, Man of Steel is my favorite superhero film. It's my all-time favorite. I think it's the best origin story for superheroes. So it's really hard for me to push back. I do see the issues and the faults that people see with it, but I'm able to look past them. And the one thing I've never looked at that movie and saying it's too dark, it's not bright and hopeful, only because I understand what the movie is. And maybe that's just me. Maybe it's what I say. Triton says, won't lie, I do get close to toxic at times. The frustration and harassment, especially if, like me, your social skills, mental health, etc. ain't great. No excuse, I know. Can take you to a dark place. Look, Triton, I get pretty... Well, I've been talking to some of my friends over on Twitter, and they've been messaging me like, God, dude, just leave the Snyder Cult alone. Just leave them alone. Focus on Animate the Snyderverse and the positivity. But sometimes it's just so hard because you see these asinine tweets come out. You see these posts come out that are just, what are they thinking? And you can't help but just, respond in some form or fashion. So I get it. I do get it. BlackRock. Derpy, it doesn't need to be overly bright. It didn't need to be desaturated. Triton, just don't judge, being honest. Yeah, man, when you're passionate, it doesn't matter what you're passionate about. If you're passionate about, the Snyderverse, if you're passionate about Star Wars, it doesn't matter. When you see people attacking something you're passionate about, absolutely, your first instinct is to jump in and defend that thing that you're passionate about. And it makes sense. And I get it. But it seems like in today's world with social media, the internet has become such this outlet for being able to say whatever you want, be damned, and I'm, guilty of that. I think that is a big issue. I think, I was at a convention just a couple months ago, and there was somebody who came up to me, and we were talking Star Wars, and I don't like the Star Wars sequels. I don't like them. And we were talking Star Wars, but they love the sequels, and I didn't feel like I had to attack him for any reason on what he was saying. I just was like, yeah, man, I disagree. I don't think they're great, but and we went on with our conversation. If that same interaction would have popped up on, say, Twitter or Facebook or something like that, I could see that going in a different direction. And I think it's a lot because you can't convey inflection in how you're saying things. Sometimes it sounds like you're being aggressive when you're not really being aggressive. I think that's kind of how it falls. And it just builds. It's just a snowball effect like that. What's ironic about Derpy's comment about New 52 Injustice is that my first 3 comics were Court of Owls, Jail Origin, Injustice, Year 1. So I'm down for a mix of New 52 and Injustice. I did enjoy the New 52 to a certain point. Injustice, I'm going to be completely honest, I didn't read Injustice. I know that I played the games, I saw the story from the Injustice games, but I've never dove deep into Injustice. I know the overall story, I know the overall ideas, so I can't say much about that. But yeah, again, I don't mind them taking inspiration. And look at BVS. I mean, the inspiration of that movie is 100% The Dark Knight Returns, and I was okay with that. They didn't need to adapt it, 1-to-1, because we have it already. And that's another thing that when it comes to the superhero genres, for some reason there's this sect of fans that want things done exactly as it is in the comics. Well, what's the fun in that? Because at that point, just go read the comic. I want to see a new interpretation. I want to see an artist, a filmmaker, a writer take these characters, sure, be inspired by older stories, because that's what will grab you. That inspiration, that the fact that we saw Batman in the mech armor, the fact that we saw Superman and Batman fighting, that's going to grab the audience like, whoa, okay, they're pulling from that. But then twisting it and putting in their own ideas, that's where it really can blow up and expand. Let's see. Derpy says, it was the style, and for me, parents didn't take kids to see. That's not okay. Superman was created during the end of the Great Depression and during World War II for kids and for hope. You're right. Derpy, I'm going to... Not that I disagree with you. I don't want you to think I disagree with you. But you got to go on the journey. And I've always agreed that there's a time and place for us to see growth of a character. Snyder was trying to do that with Superman. He was trying to show the growth of not just Superman, not just Clark Kent, but of the world. And I think where things get a little muddy is how the world reacted to Superman. And I think people don't quite understand and are willing to accept that they took that take with the story. We saw Man of Steel was a Clark Kent movie who fully understood by the time Man of Steel ends, he understands, I have to be a superhero. That's what his understanding is by the end of that movie. Batman vs. Superman is, I need to be a superhero, but how? How am I a superhero? Where do I belong? This world doesn't want me. So do I even belong here? And by the end of that movie, he's come to the conclusion that he must continue to push because the right thing to do is to save that planet and to save humanity. And Justice League is when we were supposed to see him come out and be Superman. So it was a journey that we had to go on. It just is unfortunate that people weren't, A, either willing to go on that journey, or B, just didn't think the journey was happening. I don't really know. And the character has changed since then, but to me, how Snyder wrote the character was not hopeful. I just want proper world building with character development. He put someone in charge that best films are Watchmen and 300 totally hopeful movies. Yeah, those weren't very hopeful movies. They were good movies. Again, remember, Man of Steel was not written by Zack Snyder. Not the screenplay, not story by. That was Christopher Nolan, and David Goyer. They're the ones who wrote that. And Snyder just kind of built on that. BVS was then a bit different. That was much more involved. Snyder was much more involved with that story. And yes, I get that there wasn't that hopefulness that we all wanted to see. But there's also a belief that Superman has to connect with the audience, and it's hard for you or I to connect to a being, to a character that is all powerful, that can, you know, travel faster than a speeding bullet, stronger than a locomotive. How do we relate to that? So Snyder was trying his best to humanize Superman and Clark in Batman vs. Superman. And a great way to do that is to make him feel like an outsider. Because there's been a time in most people's, if not everybody's life, where you feel like an outsider in some form or fashion, whether it's when you're in elementary school, middle school, high school, as an adult. At some point in your life, you feel like an outsider. You feel like, where do I fit in? Do I belong here? And that was kind of what Snyder was trying to do with him, is trying to get us to connect with him. So by the time he is this ultimate superhero, we can all sit back and say, yeah, we made it through. We can always make it through, and we can always be better. BlackRock. That universe was supposed to be 5-arc film, and yet directors that came in wanted to do their own thing. Snyder helped guide a little bit. Let's not forget that, the original plan for Suicide Squad was to be very much like a foreword to Justice League, with Parademons and Steppenwolf. They were going to actually be the villains alongside Enchantress in Suicide Squad, David Ayers. But that got changed because of all the crap that was going on behind the scenes. So, then you have Snyder, who very much helped Patty Jenkins with Wonder Woman. You had Snyder, who helped James Wan with Aquaman. And that's pretty much where his help stopped. So, these directors were coming in, and they wanted to do their own thing, but they wanted to help build the world that Zack was building. And it was all the crap going on behind the scenes that stopped that from happening. Triton says, I hated Superman till Man of Steel. I find Boy Scout heroes boring. Snyder made Superman flawed, interesting, human, and treated him seriously. You get it. Derpy says, I liked Man of Steel for the most part, but he should have beat Zod, trapped him in the Phantom Zone, not snapped his neck. That's the no-no for casuals. That's where the money at. Well, go watch Superman 2 from the 80s. He doesn't snap his neck, but he doesn't save Zod. He kills Zod. He kills his cronies as well. This idea that Superman can't kill immediately, it makes no sense. He's still learning his powers. He doesn't understand. And when he's given the choice of, I will never stop. I am going to destroy this planet and rebuild Krypton on the ashes of this planet, and I will not stop. He didn't know. Superman, Clark, he doesn't understand. He doesn't know what the Phantom Zone is. He's not going to capture him and throw him into something he's not aware of. And he knows just as well as, anything else, Zod has the powers he has. He knows what's in the world. They don't know about kryptonite at that point in time. So how is he going to capture him? How are they going to keep him captured and locked up? There's little intricacies that sometimes us as a viewer has to figure out for ourselves. And that's one of those things where you got to sit there and say, like, yeah, it would be great for him to capture Zod and keep him alive and not kill him. But he doesn't have much of a choice. And the pain that he feels after killing Zod, the fact that he had to snap someone's neck, you see the pain in his scream. You hear it. So, again, people get stuck on these ideas and these aspects of Superman, but sometimes you have to break the rules to better build the hero up. And I think that's what Zack was doing. we got kind of off topic here. So we're going to move on. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the Ayer stuff. I want to know what you think about David Ayer. Do you think he's wrong for supporting Blue Beetle, supporting James Gunn, for talking about James Gunn and such? Do you think it's a bad idea for him to call the Snyder Cult vultures? I don't think it's a bad idea. Look, until they are called out by the people they supposedly support, until they start to realize and point out how ridiculous they are, it's never going to stop. That's why I've been calling for Snyder to do it for so long. Triton, release the Ayer cut. Yes, indeed. Release the Ayer cut. All right, so we're going to move on to the main topic, the final topic of the day. So DCU Chapter 1, we know back in, January, the list of films, at least, some of the films in the first chapter have been revealed by James Gunn. Let's see real quick. BlackRock says, I think the issue with the third act of Man of Steel, it can feel exhausting watching Superman and Zod fight when you rewatch the film a number of times. All right. So there's this belief by a certain section of fans, as David Ayer may call them vultures, but there is a belief that the only way for DC fans to succeed is if the DCU fails. And I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't why? That's my question. Why do you believe that the DCU has to fail? Yeah, there's a lot of rumor and understanding and belief that David Zaslav is trying to right the ship of Warner Brothers to kind of flip it and make some money selling it off to another company again here within the next couple years. And some think that, okay, if we make the DC fail, that new company, obviously this new company is going to come in and do exactly what the last three companies should have done and continue the Snyderverse, because obviously that's what the new company is going to do. Well, everybody thought that with Discovery coming in, and well, here we sit. It didn't happen. So does the DCU failing actually mean a Snyderverse being restored? No, it doesn't. What a failed DCU means and signals and displays is a lack of desire to see a connected DC film universe. That is what will happen. I push back constantly because people want to sit there and say, hey, don't go see Blue Beetle. Don't go see Flash. Don't go see Aquaman. You give money to them, you're giving money to James Gunn. Look, James Gunn's films, at least the first few projects, are all budgeted out, guys. They're budgeted. They've got plans, they got the money. They're in pre-production in some form or fashion for these projects. Or in, Creature Commandos, they're at the tail end of it. But when you get down to it, the success or failure of, and I've said this many times, Flash, Blue Beetle, Aquaman, will not affect the DCU. It's not going to affect it. Those films could fail miserably. Those next two can fail miserably. Creature Commandos is still going to come out. Superman Legacy is still going to come out. Brave and the Bold still going to come out. So, should we be hoping and wishing for the DCU to fail? I don't get why. I don't get it, because it failing does not mean with 100% certainty that you'll get what you want. It doesn't mean with 100%, that it won't happen, but it doesn't mean it one way or the other. It just doesn't. So, why? Derpy says, what is going on with my chat here? It's like, maybe it was on the other screen. I did that. He goes, I think Gunn is going to get it right. And if you want Superman Legacy to fail, you're not a DC fan at all. You love throwing that around, don't you? If you don't like this, you're not a DC fan. Look, I don't buy this whole aspect of if you don't do this, if you don't do that, you're not this, you're not that. That, to me, that's just ridiculous. If you want Superman Legacy to fail, I would question if you're really a DC fan. If I were you, I'd sit back and question, like, do I even care about DC at this point? Because if not, then why say anything about it? Why talk negatively? Derpy says, James Gunn is not involved with anything before Creature Commandos. Correct, he is not. He is... it's not even his studio that's putting these films out. That's another thing that people don't understand. Triton says, Legacy will at least break even. So much bad faith and division. Yeah, I think it could do better than breaking even. I do. I think it really it comes down to marketing. And I've said this for quite some time, that when it comes to the DCU, what is going to mean a success for the DCU is going to be all about the marketing. How is James Gunn and Warner Brothers going to market this movie or these films to make sure that it's differentiated, that it's separate from the DCU? Derpy says, if you want it to purposely fail is what I mean. And exactly. You know, if you want it to truly fail, if you want this movie to fail, Superman Legacy to fail, then why are you in the fandom? I'm not going to say you're not a fan of DC. You could very well be a fan of DC, and you're just being guided incorrectly. But I can tell you, if the DCU fails, that doesn't mean the SnyderVerse will be restored. And for all you know, they could hire somebody worse, in your opinion, than James Gunn. See, I think James Gunn is a good choice. I think he's going to do well. But they may get somebody that you don't like even more. Someone that you like even less. And that could be... that would be pretty unfortunate for you, wouldn't it? Don't you think that'd be a little unfortunate? See, personally, I want to see a successful DC universe. I want to see a franchise that is built up over multiple years of interconnecting story with Batman, Superman, so on and so forth. I love Affleck as Batman. I love Cavill as Superman. That doesn't mean I'm not going to like Hornswoggle as Superman. That doesn't mean that whoever they get for Batman I'm not going to like. Just because I like these one iterations doesn't mean that I'm not going to like the other iterations or the next iteration. Where am I at? There's my... Alright, so... Triton says, I'm standing my ground. It's succeeding or failing means nothing to me. I'm not supporting Gunn. I've been burned too much. Aside from hope for Restore the Snyderverse, there's nothing left for me at DC. I mean, it's not a terrible way to look at things. I would say to you, Triton, and I think I've said this to you in the past on other shows, be hopeful. Stay hopeful. Don't judge Superman Legacy before it comes out. Don't judge Creature Commandos before it comes out. Don't judge Brave and the Bold, Swamp Thing, The Authority. Don't judge all these projects before they come out. Watch the trailers. If the trailers pique your interest a little bit, and you see the film, and maybe you'll like it. That doesn't mean you have to go on social media and say, I am going to see Superman Legacy, let's go. It doesn't mean you have to go on social media and say, screw Superman Legacy, it's going to be the shittiest movie ever. What that means is you're keeping an open mind. Why not? What is the worst that can happen by keeping an open mind? Doesn't mean that your anticipation is high. It doesn't mean your anticipation is low. It's just like, let's see what it's going to be. Let's see. Derpy says, Gunn has to win over the conservative audience more than fans. That's where the money at. And right now, the reputation of Hollywood films like Barbie and that kind of type of films is why we're at where we're at now. Derpy, the problem is Barbie made $1 billion. Unfortunately. The movie's terrible. I do agree that you have to win over the conservative audience, but taking a look at something like The Authority, we know that in The Authority that there is a big character within there that is part of the alphabet crowd, and that's fine as long as it doesn't get preachy, as long as it doesn't get all ridiculous about it. I don't think there's a problem with it, and a lot of conservatives feel that way. It's when you start getting, being preachy and stuff that's really going to push people away. But even then, you don't have to have every film focus on making sure you get the conservative crowd. You just need to balance it out. Derpy goes phase 4, or where are we at here? I don't know. I'm missing things, but he goes phase 4 and 5 to be exact is a great example. I know, unfortunately, I'm okay with it if done right. Triton goes, I'm cynical and stubborn, soon you realize. Yeah, I mean, what is going on with Mike? That's fine. You could be a little stubborn, but, you could be stubborn. I'm stubborn too, but I keep an open mind. I will push if it's something I fully believe and think is right. That's the way I'll be. But if I don't know all the details, you have to be open-minded. It's just my opinion on that. But no, you're right, Derpy. I mean, phase 4 and 5 of the MCU has been terrible. Has been a bunch of bullshit when it comes to they decided, Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios decided a while ago that they weren't going to care what conservatives or the conservative minded public thought of their films and projects and TV shows. That's for damn sure. And they're starting to see, they're seeing that it's not successful to push that way. Barbie, I will say Barbie made $1 billion not because of its message. I'm not saying that it didn't play a role in making $1 billion. For sure it did. But the name, the brand, Barbie. And then you have an attractive artist or actor, Margot Robbie. So I get it to an extent. I do. It's going to be interesting to see how the DC plays out. I don't think if the DCU fails, we're not getting the Snyderverse. We will get a Batman movie from a director, Matt Reeves, and he'll be allowed to play in this Batman universe. If it's successful, if it's a big, if it makes money, they'll say, hey, you want to do another? If it makes money, hey, you want to do another? Makes money, hey, you want to do another? They'll have someone over here do a Superman movie. If it's successful, hey, you want to do another? Wonder Woman over here. Swamp Thing over here. Like, that's what they'll do. And it's not going to be connected. That's what's going to happen. Derpy says, I don't want the Snyderverse. That's the thing. It's been 10 years. Let me ask you this, Derpy. And I get your stance on this. I do. I get your stance. But if the Snyderverse was restored, if they gave us the Snyderverse alongside the DCU. So James Gunn was still building his DCU, but the Snyderverse, they said, hey, the Snyderverse is going to be on Max. It's going to be a 4-hour-long event. Would you be okay with that? If they said, hey, we're going to animate the Snyderverse. It's going to be an animation. Not going to affect anything James Gunn's doing over here. It's going to be its own thing over here. Would you be okay with that? Derpy says, we finally have a guy in charge that knows how to do it with Kevin Feige's secrets. Yeah, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, with Kevin Feige's secrets. I think that's bullcrap. I think Marvel is so far ahead with their planning and their outlook that James Gunn coming in, and if he has any knowledge of what Feige's doing, it's not going to matter to what he's doing over in DC. Triton says, what also helped Barbie was just pure curiosity regarding just what the hell it was going to be about. And it was about bullshit. Derpy says, I'm okay with that, but nothing more. And that's the thing. I think if there needs to be a goal. One set goal. The Snyder Cut was simple. The Snyder Cut was, we want the Snyder Cut. And the goal was, we don't care if it's completed or not, we want the Snyder Cut. That was the goal of the Snyder Cut movement. The SnyderVerse movement, though, is a bit different because you have people that want the remaining arc that Snyder was making. You have people who want the Deathstroke and Batman and Cyborg and the Ayer cut, and they want the other Flash movie that was almost made. And that's where things get iffy. When I say animate the Snyderverse, they could do all of that in animation for a quarter of the price it would be to make even one of those in live action. You would get the entire story. And with animation today, animation is damn good today. You can get the actors back for voice acting. I don't see why people are so against that idea. If they animate it, make it event to see for fans. Exactly. They can make a huge event out of it as well. There's a lot that they could do. But, I mean, back on topic, if the DCU fails, that's it, guys. That's it. The DCU fails, we're not getting the Snyderverse restored. We're not going to have a connected universe. We're not going to get it. And is it worth that? Is it worth it to see someone like James Gunn fail? Is it worth us getting nothing of any substance to see James Gunn fail? Because I can tell you now, yeah, we get past these first couple projects that James Gunn has a heavy hand in, this universe is going to blow up. And I think it's going to be fantastic. Triton says, Snyder fans who want 20 more films piss me off. Derpy agrees. If it fails, we're done. If it fails, we're done. Everyone's done. Take a look at what's going on with Marvel right now. They're struggling over there. And even though they have all these plans, you have to know in the back of Kevin Feige's mind, or even Bob Iger, do we need a change with Marvel Studios? That change could be a complete reboot. Could be a change in leadership there. Could mean they just end it. What if King Dynasty is it? Or Secret Wars, or whatever the second Avenger movie is. What if that's it? And they just, hey, we had a great run of 25, 26 years. That's a possibility. And when you see a franchise that was as successful, as big as Marvel was, and then they say, look, we have a 25-year story that we told, and now we're just, hey, we're going to go over here and do something different now. That's always a possibility. Do we want to see that happen to DC before it even gets started? And I know you could push back. Oh, DCU started in 2013. The problem with that is it failed within the first 3 years. It did. It was the fan base. You see how fandom is today. That's how fandom was in 2016 with the DCEU. Marvel thinks some of the things are still making some money. They're still getting an audience. But the fan divide. Derpy says, we're going back to standalone with Batman and Superman if gun fails. Exactly. Triton says, in my opinion, if the MCU does Galactus, that should be the final phase. Yeah, I don't know how you come back after Galactus, unless they, there is a rumor going around now. I'm not sure. I mean, I'll say it, whatever. There's a rumor that they're going to do a semi-reboot after Galactus, which is supposed to come on the heels of, I guess, Secret Wars. Secret Wars is the second one, I believe. I think it was King Dynasty, then Secret Wars, I think. That's supposed to come on the heels of that, and there's supposed to be this big event where we more establish the multiverse, and kind of like The Flash, where it kind of brings everything together. We see a bunch of different versions of things, and then it all comes together as a new universe. You'll have new Tony Stark, new this, new that, new this. That way, it's like a reboot. But the only way that you can really understand and get to that point is if you watch the last 25 years. That's what I've heard. Whether it happens like that or not, who knows? I know that their plans are always in flux and always change. Derpy, the best depiction of the characters is the DCAU with Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, and what makes me sad, ever since the first Avenger, casuals respect Marvel more than the characters I love. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have that. Let's talk about DC here in this comment real quick. The Bruce Timm, Paul Dini verse, great universe. But even those characters weren't exactly the characters that were depicted in the comics at the time. So even myself as a kid who wasn't a big fan of comics at the time, I was into these characters that were nothing, I was a casual fan in that regard. So then you sit here and twist it and say, what makes me sad ever since the first Avengers, casuals respect Marvel than the characters I love. The same thing happened with the MCU. And there was a time when these films and animated projects were supposed to be a gateway into the comics. It was supposed to be like, hey, I like Batman. Let's check out some of these comics. Hey, I like Spider-Man. Let's check out some of these comics. Marvel kind of turned that around and was more like, look, read the comics if you like this stuff. Sure. But we're doing our own thing here. So, yeah, we'll be inspired by some of the previous comics, of the past, some of the big stories. But we're doing our own thing. And that's okay. And Derby says, which were created first before Marvel, and they copied many characters. You talking about Marvel copying DC characters? Yeah, that's a discussion for another time, and I think we've actually discussed it in a podcast in the past. It's not that big of a deal, in my opinion. It is what it is. You copy what's successful. That's how you do it. But I'm going to wrap things up, guys. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Yeah, but the casuals love the movies, Derby says. They do, and that's fine. The one thing I love doing is meeting somebody who's like, hey, you like superheroes? I'm like, yeah, I love superhero stuff. And they start bringing up, Marvel films or DC films. And I'm like, oh, yeah, Batman vs. Superman. Yeah, I love that movie, or I love that whole thing. It's based off of a comic. And then their mind is sometimes blown. Like, whoa, that's based off of a comic. Like, what's the comic? And you tell them a little bit about it. And then they go read it. Or if you have a copy, you're like, here, check it out. And they read it. And they come back and say, that was damn good. That's what I like when it comes to some of the casual fans. That's exciting to me. But everyone, thank you again so much for listening, watching. Make sure you hit that like button, hit subscribe. If it fails, though, we won't get universe. That's correct, Derpy. If the DCU fails, we will not get a universe of any sort, unfortunately. But new setup. Don't have my music yet, I don't think. So, yeah. With all that said, I'll talk to all of you later.